Hey guys, it's Kai, and this is a critique session. So I'll be doing these weekly. If you want some feedback on your work, just send me an email. This is the link. I'll also put this link in the descriptions. Alright, so let's get started. The first one's by Mitch. I really like this image because the night sky always gets me. It's just so amazing seeing how crazy our universe is. Nature is just so wonderful. For this image, I really like the color of the warm as well as the cold. It complements quite well, as well as the light kind of in the foreground. It really leads into the image. The composition is really great too. So some changes I would personally do. The first thing is I noticed that the corner here, it's really contrasting. You get a really strong white as well as a pretty dark blue. I would actually lower this part a bit, just decrease the brightness, which essentially decreases contrast. I'm doing this really quick, but if when you're doing this yourself, you want to be more careful. I'm just doing a quick brush over, so you're losing actually a lot of details. And the next part is here. I noticed that this star or this galaxy here is really bright. It really takes the attention away from the center. I'm actually looking at this part more frequently than here. So I would actually just spot heal and remove this section. Just a quick before and after. You can see that once these two areas are more dimmed or removed, the eyes tend to focus on the middle a lot more. The next thing I noticed is that the trees here are a little bit kind of warped. I'm not too sure if the landscape is like that or if there's lens distortion. But when I do these edits, I kind of think in the viewer's perspective. For example, if they had no idea where this is, when you don't know what this place is, you might not know that there's a hill, or so you would generally think this is distorted. To avoid that, I would actually just straighten up this image a bit. I'm using Photoshop, so what I'm using is the warp option. You can just go to edit, edit, transform, and then just warp here. Just move the two corners kind of a little bit up so that it's a bit straight, and then just drag this part down a bit. Alright, just a quick before and after. The next thing I would do is, I also noticed the tractor is a little bit slanted as well. It gives you the sense that this image is not really balanced. I would also warp the tractor as well. And when you warp this section, the trees kind of tend to be warped as well. So I'll just quickly correct that. Alright. The next thing is I noticed that there's quite a bit of contrast in this area, especially the dim tree as well as the horizon. This part is very eye-catching as well, but for me, I kind of want the main focus of this image to actually be towards kind of the center. What I'll do is I'll actually just create a curves, and then I'm going to lower the contrast of this section. If you're using Lightroom, another way to do this is just to do a radial filter and just drag it over and just lower contrast. But what this essentially does is it makes this part less eye-catching, and when this part becomes less eye-catching, the eye will tend to focus on another spot on the image, which is the center here. Next is we're just going to bump the yellow saturation up just a bit so that it's just as saturated as the blues. This will create more contrast as well as direct the eyes to the center. And I'm just going to put it in the center here. Alright, I think that's pretty much it for this photo. Overall, it's a really great photo, and these are just some personal preferences. And just to show you a quick before and after. This was the before, and this is the after. Alright, so next is a photo by Axel. I'm thinking this is taken in Iceland. The hill, the green feels really familiar, as well as the mood. I really like how dynamic this is. So I can see the clouds as well as the mountain and pretty much the shadow details. So the first thing I noticed is that this photo is missing scale. And what I mean by that is you're missing, let's say, a person, a tree, or a vehicle. An object where we're really familiar with. Without the object, we can't really tell how big this mountain is. Let me just show you an example. I'm just going to draw a quick person. Just a stick figure. You can see that once I draw this stick figure, we can already tell that this mountain is pretty massive, because we get a sense that this person is this big and this mountain is so much bigger, right? And if we increase the sky a bit larger to like here, we can tell that this turns out to be more of a hill than a mountain. And if we make him even smaller, now we can really feel that this is a huge mountain. So what I recommend is add a person in, add a car, one or the other. It'll definitely make this photo a lot more relatable to the audience, as well as give off that sense of scale I've been talking about. Other than that, there's nothing I would really fix or change. Maybe some dodge and burning. Lastly, I would actually add a vignette. This will help focus the mountain a lot more, because the sky here is quite bright and the mountain's a bit more dim. We want to kind of lower the contrast. So just do it to the edges of the clouds. So something like that. And for the third photo, this is by Giorgio. I really like the overall setting. A building under the mountain, and those clouds are really epic. So first thing I noticed is this middle tree. It's way too dark, and just to show you how dark it is, when I sample it, it's pretty much at the pure darks. What I tried to avoid is adding a big chunk of pure black in the center of the image. It's like adding a big chunk of pure white. The first thing people will notice is this big blotch of black, so it's actually taking away from the image. For example, if I do a pure white here, it's not really adding much to the image. You can think of it the same for this tree. When you're processing this in Lightroom or Photoshop, make sure you don't really dim the shadows or blacks too much. I'm just going to do a quick fix. Alright, so now that we have a bit more details here, we can continue. Next is, I noticed this patch here. I think it's maybe dust or maybe like a raindrop. I would just remove that with spot healing because it's creating contrast, and once there's contrast, the eyes kind of look towards it. Also here, the black patches of flowers, it's not really adding anything into the photo. It's actually making the viewers look at the foreground. Personally, I don't think is the main focus of this image. So I'm just going to spot heal those away as well. When you're editing this in Lightroom or Photoshop, you can definitely raise the shadows, and then these won't really be needed to remove. The next thing I noticed is that there's some conflict in lighting in this image. So for example, you can see that the wall here is this color, and this wall here is this color. You can tell that this part is a lot darker than this one. So the lights, according to this building, the light is pretty much shining in this direction. But when you look at the back of the photo, it's actually bright here and you dimmed here. So it's kind of giving a really conflicting kind of feel. And from how this image looked, I would assume that it was actually raining. So the light is actually kind of coming directly down. But for the purposes of this edit, we're just going to assume that the light's coming from this direction. I'm just going to quickly lower the brightness here. Just a quick, one's probably not enough. I'm just going to do another one. Yep, I think that's good. Now, another thing is the mountains in the back is quite saturated with blue. Feels a bit unnatural. I would just decrease the blues by a tiny bit. Alright, finally, I'm just going to add a bit more of light coming from here, just to kind of show that it's coming from this direction and it's lighting up the buildings from this section. Just a nice soft light. Alright, I think that's it. Just a quick before and after. And that's it for this critique. Again, if you have any pictures that you want me to review, if you have any questions or suggestions, you can leave a comment down below. If you found the video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. Have a great day, my friends.